How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your July 2019 horoscope for Pisces, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'm sending you all of the positive energy I have for you guys this month because, we've been talking about, we knew July was coming. Like, we've been here, we've been talking about this for a while. We got eclipse season going on, we got a Mercury retrograde going on, and what I wanted to say is, while we have all of this crazy, intense stuff going on this month, it's important to go through this and know that there's something else at the end of this, because the changes that we'll be making this month are going to be planting seeds for things that are going to grow quite fruitfully and nicely by the time we get into August and September. So just know that this isn't the end. This is kind of like a big turnaround for good things to actually start finally happening. So we are starting July off on July 1st with Mars ingressing into Leo. Now, Mars has been in Cancer in your 5th house for the past couple weeks, maybe causing some irritations and some problems and confusion on where to take action on the things like the 5th house, like love and sex and children and hobbies and whatnot. But as Mars is now getting out of its sign of fall and entering Leo, which it's not its domicile or exaltation or anything, but it does share a little bit of triplicity with its ruler, Aries, Mars can start acting a little bit better, a little bit more healthier. But as Mars is our actions, our intentions, our drive, what we're doing, as well as Mars heats things up, it inflammates, brings some problems and some stress because it is a malefic planet. While Mars is in the sign of Leo, this is being expressed through a more solar quality, through a more, can sometimes look like acting out of pride, acting out of our egos, getting a little bit harsh and brash sometimes. Mars in Leo, though, what's important about this is acting out of integrity and acting out of authenticity, and also being able to have some courageousness behind this. Now, Mars is entering your guys' 6th house, and the 6th house is all about your work and your routine and your health and your day-to-day habits. Now, while Mars transiting your 6th house can bring some, inflammatory type qualities to health, Mars in your 6th house is definitely going to be a pep in your step when it comes to taking action and having better habits and getting more done in your day. But then the next day on July 2nd, we have the solar eclipse in Cancer that's happening, and this is really important. We're finally starting eclipse season that's going to be lasting the next 2 weeks, and what's really making July weird. But when you have not just this solar eclipse, but this is supposed to be the new moon in Cancer, but that light is getting cut out somewhere, and this is kind of like bringing and drawing a lot of attention to this area that may have been a little bit unexpected. And this is happening in your 5th house of love and sex and children and hobbies and art and creativity. The 5th house is an extension of the 1st house, and it's what helps personify and make you unique. But the next day after the eclipse on July 3rd is when we have Venus enter Cancer. And now Venus, the planet of love and relationships and value and connection, is going into the sign of Cancer, which is all about empathy and relation and building a connection on that level. This is about trust. This is about vulnerability. Cancer is all about the essentials and sentiments. And as Venus enters the sign of Cancer, where she's valuing and bringing worth and praise to those type of qualities, this is transiting your 5th house of love and sex and children and fun stuff. So this is really positive. But a few days later on July 8th is when Mercury stations retrograde in Leo. And I already did a whole Mercury retrograde video, so make sure you guys check it out. However, when Mercury stations retrograde in Leo, it's stationing retrograde in your 6th house. And of course, like we just discussed, the 6th house is all about our day-to-day routine, our habits, our health, our employment, because you go to work every day or almost every day. Now, Mercury stationing retrograde right here, this may be miscommunications in the workplace, maybe, a miscommunication. This is like something happening that wasn't necessarily supposed to go that way, that you're going to have to retrace your steps over again and kind of go combat it again. But I think this is kind of reimagining and redefining what exactly your guys' system looks like, and I think that's going to help you as we get into later on in the next couple of weeks. But then on July 16th, we have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn. And this is a big deal because it's like right on top of Saturn and the South Node and Pluto. And they're all conjunct, all transiting Capricorn in your 11th house. And this could feel like you've been having to restructure or or bring in a new system, update the system that you've implemented when it comes to friendships and social groups and, bigger groups of people events. And as we have what's supposed to be a full moon, where there should be lighting up an axis, but this is an eclipse, so that's getting cut out a little bit right here. I think what's important is looking at what system or structures have you implemented with bigger groups of people and friends that doesn't serve you anymore and it's not working. Now, on July 16th, Venus is also going to be opposing Saturn. And while Venus is in Cancer in your 5th house, where you're starting to value and bring more attention and care for and nurturing of not only your children, but your sex life, your intimate life, or your hobbies, your creativity, I think in order to, and like the 5th house is all about fun, is a good way to put it. And while Venus is really starting to value and wanting to protect that, she can't always do that because of the prior obligations of what Saturn is being brought in the 11th house. It's like, oh, I want to do this, but I got to go here with these and do this stuff with these people. Now, I bring that up because the next day on July 17th is when Venus is going to conjoin the North Node. And even though on this Venus opposed Saturn lunar eclipse thing where there's like, it's going to be a really weird vibe, and it's going to be like, that there's this problem here with this group of people that you need to stay away from, but it comes back down to, well, what do you want? What's worth, putting your trust into? What's worth, taking care of? What's worth nurturing and feeding? And as Venus conjoins the North Node the next day, even though this may be kind of like a sour feeling around not having that, Venus conjoining the North Node is very much finding a desire for that. The North Node is all about the dragon's head or Rahu. It's what we're hungry for, what we're wanting to consume. It's like the path that we're on, and we're going to go for it. Venus conjoining the North Node is kind of like having that overwhelming feeling of like, I need to have this, and this is what I want to do. And so I do think that lunar eclipse is going to be important when it comes to cementing in what exactly it is our wants at this moment. But then 2 days later, we have Mercury retrogressing back into Cancer, where when Mercury was retrograding in Leo in your 6th house, you were kind of like, trying to figure out what the problem was, where it was, and how to tackle it. Mercury retrogressing back into Cancer is kind of like asking, well, if this is a problem, how do I feel about it? And what do I want to do out of this? And Mercury in Cancer is trying to logically explain emotions, which is very tough. And so Mercury may have a tough time with that. But 3 days later, on July 21st, is when Mercury goes Cazimi with the Sun. That is when it's right in between the Sun and the Earth. And basically, in essence, it's when it's getting purified by fire and things are starting to make sense and it gets an insight of clarity. And I think this is important because while Mercury retrogrades in Leo in your 6th house, it's kind of like, I want to be busy. I am busy, but I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like. Mercury going Cazimi is kind of like really getting a clear idea of what it's supposed to feel like and understanding that through a logical sense in order to basically saying you'll know what it's supposed to feel like, you'll like that feeling, and then you'll start to understand that more logically. And then on July 23rd, that's when the Sun moves into Leo, and then the main luminary, the source of all of our life here on Earth, goes into your 6th house where it gets to focus more on day-to-day routines, your work ethic, what you're doing every day, your health. But the next day on July 24th is when Venus conjoins Mercury, or Mercury conjoins Venus, whatever way you want to look at it. But what's important about this is while Venus is in Cancer being like, I'm starting to realize and nurture more of the things that I want, more of my desires, more of my wants and needs, Mercury conjoining Venus is kind of like getting that feeling and kind of having a logical understanding of like, this is what I want. I am valuing this, so I am going to invest time into this and protect this thing and nurture this thing. But then as we move into July 28th, that is when Venus is going to ingress into Leo and enter your 6th house, where it's not necessarily about focusing and protecting on the things that you want, but it's about actually doing it. What are you doing every single day? How are you implementing more Venusian things into your day-to-day activities? Venus is going to, somewhat benefit your health a little bit more, only because, well, that's going to be a little more of a longer conversation, only because Mars and Venus are going to be in there, and then later Mercury. And they're going to start trining Jupiter in Sagittarius, which is in your 10th house right now. Like, August is going to start kicking ass once you start laying down the work right now in July. But as Venus enters your 6th house, this is about being like, what? I'm ready to work. I'm ready to get this shit done. I'm ready to implement this stuff because I'm feeling good about it finally. And then we finally end the month off on July 31st with the new moon in Leo happening in the 6th house. And like I said earlier, we're going to have Mars here, we're going to have the Sun, Venus, and then the moon, later on Mercury. And Venus is going to go Cazimi while it's in Leo, and it's all going to be trining Jupiter and Sag, which will be going direct next month in your 10th house. So I can't emphasize enough on like get the shit you need to get done this month and work your ass off, because there's some great rewards coming up later on that you know you've been waiting for. But this new moon in Leo is kind of about resetting your intentions around what you're doing and why you're doing it. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next month.